Okay, so in this video we're going to talk very much about chipping. Now, some of you may be thinking it's autumn, if you haven't guessed, and why would you now be encouraging chipping work? Well, your chipping is very similar, if not identical, to the takeaway in the golf swing. So your takeaway is that sort of first movement as we're taking that club back. And if I'm working with a student who struggles with the takeaway, so they have a couple of problems which I'm going to talk about in this video, then actually, one, you can improve your takeaway, but two, you can improve your short game. And it's kind of, cross-pollinating. So by working on chipping and pitching actually improves, obviously, things like the takeaway. And it's also very productive because you're also encouraging yourself to work on chipping as well. So what I want to do in this video is I want to talk about how to chip, what you're likely doing to overcomplicate chipping, and we'll kind of take it forward from there. So first of all, I'm kind of like a massive believer in like keeping things really, really simple, right? And there might be some of you out there that are much more advanced than that and might want to work on multiple sort of shots around the green and stuff. But personally speaking, I think just getting a bit of a stock shot is a good way to go. And what we are looking for with a stock shot is fundamentally two things. The first one is width, okay? So when it comes to width and your hands and arms, you basically want to just try and keep the club as low to the ground as possible. So I'm not somebody who would encourage any sort of setting of the wrist in terms of this position. I want to kind of keep that club as low to the ground as you possibly can. So if you're just doing a very sort of, simple chip, just a few yards in front of you, you just want to take that club back and keep it as low to the ground on the way back and on the way through. Really simple, right? That's all I'm looking for. Now, you have got an issue there with chipping because sometimes you might be on a surface like this, right, where you the ground, it might be on a really fluffy lie, let's say. And if it's on a fluffy lie and you keep the club low to the ground, you're not going to have any problem with producing a sort of shot like that where it pops up and runs out. However, that doesn't always happen, right? Particularly this sort of time of year, it gets a bit sort of saturated, a little bit wet, you might be in long grass. So you need to find a way to introduce more steepness. Now, what I mean by more steepness is we need to find a way to get the club to strike more down on the ball. Now, a couple of options you've got. One option is that you can obviously introduce more shaft flinging to push the hands further forward. Another option you've got is to move the ball position. The issue with that is if you do both of those things, you take away the bounce. And taking away the bounce basically means that now the leading edge is going to be more prone to digging in, which is something that we don't want to be doing because then that club can get quite stuck. So the conundrum we've got is how do we get the club to strike more down on the ball without sacrificing our idea of width? And the answer lies very much in your setup position with regards to your chest. So what that means is if I normally sort of set up in my full swing, let's just say something like so, where we're chipping, you might narrow your stance a little bit, right? But then what we need to do is if I sort of take this club back, that's going to come down maybe too sort of shallow. But if I kind of move my upper body more over my lower body, you can see the way my shoulders become more horizontal, my sternum moves a couple of inches in front of the ball, and then that's going to help me get that kind of angle of attack strike on the back of the golf ball. And if you want to advance that slightly further, then you can. And the way you're going to advance that slightly further is you are going to move towards your lead side in the backswing position. And that's a really good skill to have because then you've basically got the same technique with your hands and arms all of the time, but you're changing your strike by kind of moving more to the left, and that's a good feeling to have in the golf swing. And that's kind of what you work on. So you start off loosely by just getting used to your setup position, get your upper body more over your lead side, take it back if you like, very much like keep the club low to the ground, and it produces a nice little chip shot like so. Now, the last point that I have to mention, because what happens a lot with golfers, particularly when it starts coming into like chipping and pitching, right, is that golfers really struggle with the takeaway with regards to the club face, because what they do is they go, well, I'm supposed to keep the bounce on the club, so I've got to move my hands like this, and they kind of do this, and what they forget is about the club face. And if you start taking the club back, right, like so, where you get your hands close and the club goes straight back like this, and you're trying to use the bounce, what's actually happening is you're closing the face. Okay, so if you kind of take it back too much this way, okay, then you close the face, and that's why we need a little bit of wrist hinge. Okay, so we need a little bit of wrist hinge in that first move to basically help us open the club face, and you need that. And that's another misconception which we'll come into in more detail on another day, but a lot of people associate wrist hinging and flexing as closing the face, but it doesn't. So if I hold the club here, see how nice and square that face is to a horizontal target, if I introduce a bit of wrist hinge, the way it opens it, and you need that. You need to allow the face to open in the golf swing so that, well, obviously it doesn't get closed and it doesn't dig in. And then all of a sudden you've got this setup position, weight on your lead side, move your sternum over the ball, keep the club nice and wide, a little bit of wrist hinge, and that just opens that face, and then you can play some delicious little chip shots. So that's what you need to work on. Hopefully that video helps and you guys can start to understand where you might be going wrong with your chipping. And then obviously I'm not going to hit a shot too far here because I don't want to lose the ball and get in trouble, but then you just take that further back and further back even more for your sort of theoretical pitch shots. I'll see you soon.